Jeffrey Dahmer, 17 victims. Ted Bundy, 30 plus victims. Gary Ridgway, 71 plus victims. But none of them even compare to this infamous serial killer's victim count. Welcome to Premier History. On this channel, we take a look back at pivotal points in time, epic battles and chilling crimes, ensuring to help you understand what it was like to live through these moments. On today's episode, we look at Harold Shipman, a doctor who practiced in England during the 1970s through to the 1990s, and is arguably the world's most prolific serial killer. Harold Frederick Shipman, known by most as Fred, was born January 14, 1946, in a council estate in Nottingham, England. He was the middle child in a working-class family and said to be the favoured child of his mother, Vera. When his mother was diagnosed with terminal lung cancer, he oversaw her care as she declined. She was administered morphine by a home doctor, which fascinated him, and the positive effect that it had on her suffering. She would eventually die on June 21, 1963. This would potentially be a trigger for him, not only the devastation it brought, but also the similarities of this to his crimes in later life. After his mother's death, he was determined to go to medical school. Eventually, he was admitted to the Leeds University Medical School for training 2 years later. By 1974, he was a father of two and had joined a medical practice in Todmorden, Yorkshire, where he initially thrived as a family practitioner before allegedly becoming addicted to the painkiller pethidine. He forged prescriptions for large amounts of the drug, and he was forced to leave the practice when caught by his medical colleagues. A few years later, Shipman was accepted onto the staff at Donnybrook Medical Centre in Market Street, Hyde, a suburb within Greater Manchester. Here, he established himself as a hard-working GP and enjoyed the trust of patients and colleagues. In 1998, a local undertaker noticed that a large number of Dr. Shipman's patients seemed to be dying at an unusually high rate and exhibiting similar poses in death. Most were fully clothed and usually sitting up or reclined on a settee. The undertaker was concerned enough to approach Shipman about this directly, who reassured him that there was nothing to be concerned about. Later, another medical colleague, Dr. Susan Booth, also found the similarities disturbing, and the local coroner's office was alerted, who then contacted the police. A covert investigation followed, but Shipman was cleared, as it appeared that his records were in order. Later, a more thorough investigation revealed that Shipman had been altering the medical records of his patients to corroborate their causes of death. His killing spree was only brought to an end thanks to Angela Woodruff, the daughter of one of the victims, who refused to accept the explanations given for her mother's death. Kathleen Grundy, a wealthy 81-year-old, was found dead in her home on June 24, 1998. Woodruff was advised by Shipman that an autopsy was not required, and Grundy was buried shortly after. Woodruff was a lawyer and had always handled her mother's affairs, so it was with some surprise that she discovered that another will existed, which left the bulk of her mother's estate to Dr. Shipman. Woodruff was convinced the document was a forgery and that Shipman had murdered her mother. She alerted the local police, where detectives quickly came to the same conclusion after examining the evidence. Grundy's body was exhumed, and a post-mortem revealed that she had died of a morphine overdose administered within 3 hours of her death, precisely within the time frame of Shipman's visit. Shipman's home was searched, yielding medical records, an odd collection of jewellery, and an old typewriter which proved to be the instrument upon which Grundy's forged will had been produced. It was immediately apparent to the police from the medical records seized that the case would extend further than the single death of Grundy, and priority was given to those deaths it would be most productive to investigate, namely victims who had not been cremated and who had died following a home visit by Shipman. Shipman had urged families to cremate their relatives in a large number of cases, stressing that no further investigation of their deaths was necessary, even in the instances where these relatives had died of causes previously unknown to the families. In situations where they did raise questions, Shipman would provide computerized medical notes that corroborated his cause of death observations. Police later established that Shipman would, in most cases, alter these medical notes directly after killing the patient to ensure that his account matched the historical records. What Shipman had failed to realise was that each alteration of the records would be time-stamped by the computer, enabling police to ascertain exactly which records had been altered. Following extensive investigations, which included numerous exhumations and autopsies, the police charged Shipman with 15 individual counts of murder on September 7, 1998. Police alleged that he would make home visits with his elderly patients and inject them with lethal doses of diamorphine. Before we continue, please click that subscribe button and turn on notifications to be the first to know when more episodes are released. Shipman's trial commenced in Preston Crown Court on October 5, 1999. The prosecution asserted that Shipman had killed the 15 patients because he enjoyed exercising control over life and death. They dismissed any claims that he had been acting compassionately, as none of the victims were suffering a terminal illness. The government pathologist led the court through the gruesome post-mortem findings where morphine toxicity was the cause of death in most instances. Following a meticulous summation by the judge and a caution to the jury that no one had actually witnessed Shipman kill any of his patients, the jury were sufficiently convinced by the testimony and evidence presented and unanimously found Shipman guilty on all charges, 15 counts of murder and 1 of forgery on the afternoon of January 31st, 2000. The judge passed 15 life sentences as well as a 4-year sentence for forgery, which he commuted to a whole life sentence, effectively removing any possibility of parole. Shipman was then incarcerated at Durham Prison. The fact that a doctor had killed 15 patients sent a shudder through the medical community, but this was to prove insignificant in the light of further investigations that delved more deeply into his patient history. He may in fact have taken his first victims within months of obtaining his license to practice medicine, with one patient who died in March 1971. An inquiry commission examined the records of 500 patients who died while in Shipman's care. They concluded that it was likely that he had murdered at least 218 of his patients. Although this number was an estimation, numerous others have looked into the case and his patient history, with some estimates of his death toll to be as high as 265. Whatever the exact number, the sheer scale of his murderous reign has ensured Shipman to be remembered as the most prolific serial killer in the world. He remained at Durham Prison throughout these investigations, maintaining his innocence. He was moved to Wakefield Prison in June 2003. On January 13, 2004, Shipman was discovered dead in his prison cell, having hung himself by using bed sheets tied to the window bars of his cell. As always, thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that thumbs up and leave a comment telling us your thoughts.